So today we are going to do day 2, an oil change, because yesterday after doing a carb clean I saw that we had low oil. So I want to put more oil in, but I don't want to use the bad oil that's in it. So we're going to do a complete oil change. First thing we are going to do is take out the old oil filter and replace it with the new one that I got. It might not be the exact same one, so depending on if it fits or not, I might go return it or put it in. Then this bike takes 4 quarts, so I got a 5-quart thingy here, and then all the excess oil will go into our pan here. Alright, let's get started. So this is our oil filter right here. I believe we have one of the canister ones where you take this off and there'll be a filter inside that you can remove and replace. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to unscrew it from here, let it hook into our oil pan, and then replace it with the next cartridge. Okay, so this is our oil filter. We're going to try and remove. Hopefully we won't get much on the exhaust. If we do, it'll be okay because it'll just burn off if we must. Alright, let's see about getting this out of here. Come on. It's very hard to get in there with these exhausts on either side. Make sure to do this when your bike is cold. Alright, here we go. We have a little bit of dripping directly into the exhaust. Dang it. It'll be okay. So you just kind of unscrew it. A little bit will drip out. That's what's supposed to happen. Okay. Alright. Now we're just about, yep, there we go. Now it'll kind of pour out. And now this one looks to be the kind that is not a cartridge, meaning that I believe I have the wrong filter. Hopefully. And again, I've never done a cartridge one like this before. Okay. This is not a cartridge one, so I have the wrong filter, but that's okay. Now that I have it off, I can take its part number and I can go get the correct one. So we're going to set this right here and let all the oil drain out from there. And then next thing to do is look for the drain plug that should be on the bottom of your engine block. So we removed our oil filter from up here, just a little bit up there, and if you come directly diagonal and down, this is our drain plug. Sadly, it's directly over another pipe, so both of these pipes are going to be ending up coated in oil. So we're definitely going to take some wiping material and wipe that away. So I'm going to go grab a wrench and we're going to remove this and fill up this oil pan a bit more, and then we can start filling. Okay, so we're going to remove this bolt and we're going to let it drain, and while it drains we're going to look at the oil and see if it sparkles or anything like that, because that means that there is damage to our engine. Alright, let's see if I can get this out. Alrighty. Alright, here we go. Should start leaking oil any second now. Uh-oh. This isn't good. Maybe we might have to remove the exhaust to be able to do this, which would really stink. Hopefully they made that bolt just short enough that we won't have to remove the exhaust. Damn. Nope. Looks like we're going to have to do something about these exhausts to do anything with this oil. Okay, so it turns out that I can push them just enough to get this tiny little bolt out of there. Just on the edge, it looked like. So as you can see, nothing really shiny in our oil, which is good news. Everything looks to be smooth. Honestly, probably could have gone a little bit longer without having to replace it. But on buying a bike like this, it's definitely good to do an oil change when buying it. So as we can see here, good flow. Nothing scratches my finger when I do that. Everything is nice and brown as it should be. Nothing looks sparkly like metal shavings. And should just all flow out of there. Give it a minute, I'll tip it back up on its middle center to get all that last little bit of oil out of there. But once that's done, we can replug the hole, put the oil filter back on if it's clean enough, and then fill it with oil, and that should be an oil change done. Okay, so now that it's slowly dripping, I'm going to lean it up onto its center, top, middle, whatever you want to call it, so we can get that last little bit out. See how it starts to flow a little bit more? That's all that excess that is coming out from the other side of the engine. We're definitely going to want to do this when we fill it too, to make sure that we get as much as we can get in there without overfilling it. Okay, so I've cleaned off the oil filter a bit just so I could read the part number and so we can decide whether or not to put it back in the bike or to leave it in there only for a couple days while I work on getting a new one. So this is a Fram oil filter, part number pt2. When I say O, I mean 0. And so if I ever need to get a new one, I'll have to remember that, and you can take that to AutoZone or anywhere that really does parts like this, and they can search that number and get you the exact same filter. So now that I know that number, we can take a look and we can see what the inside of our filter looks like. So the inside of our filter starts right after this brim right here that makes a connection with the block of the engine, creating a seal so the oil can flow through these passages. These passages, like these ones right here, all look pretty clean. You can see no metal shavings, and the inside there looks pretty clean. Doesn't look like there's anything that could come through and get into the engine through the oil filter. So this one to me looks like it could go back in for at least a little while we do testing and stuff like that. Once I get the bike actually running and I'm going to daily it or anything like that, we'll definitely get a new one of these and replace it. So we're going to be putting this filter back in just for testing purposes and to make sure that we have something over that hole and cleaning our oil, no matter how small or big it is. And so, since this is a filter that only goes like this and it's on a motorcycle, I don't think we'll have to fill it. All we'll do is, actually, let's do it right now. We'll take a little bit of this oil and put it around the seal to help it make a good contact patch with the engine. And then we screw it in right over that hole. And so since it's a little bit oily, once we get it hand tight with the oil on there, I'll wipe that oil off and get it as tight as I can. Usually you're supposed to get it hand tight and then go a 3/4 of a turn. So for me, that's probably as far as I'm going to be able to get it anyway. This is a kind of long bolt, so it's going to take a minute to get it all the way in there. Okay, so now we have this tight, but as tight as I'm going to get it with the oil on there. So now I'm going to take a rag and I'm going to wipe all the way around all of this, so that way I can get a better grip on it and tighten it just a little bit more. Okay, so also don't forget to wipe your hands to make sure that they don't put any more on there once you've wiped it off. So now we're just going to take a dirty rag, doesn't really matter all that much, it's the outside. We're going to take this, wipe it all down so we can get a good grip on there. And we want to be able to take this another 3/4 of a turn, or as much as we can really get from finger tight with oil. And then should be on there good. Look at how much came off there. So, oh, okay, come on. There. is about as tight as I'm going to get it. I'm going to keep trying once I turn off the camera, but just make sure it's tight enough on there, but not too tight. So now we're going to put this bolt back up in there, and so that way we don't have any more oil coming out when we fill it, because that would really stink. So this bolt has a little rubber washer, really, but it's in not very great condition, so we should really replace it. But since this is just a preliminary one and we're trying to do this on the cheap, I'm going to leave it on there and just put it right back in. Okay, here we go. So just like before, we're probably going to have to move this out of the way a little bit. And there we go. Now it goes right up in there. You can screw it in there easily with your fingers. Okay, so now that we have this up there tight, finger tight, we're going to take this and tighten it until it feels pretty tight. But again, we don't want to strip it, so we're just going until it feels tight, not past it. So you should be able to do this open hand at a weird angle or anything until it gets kind of tight. Then you just kind of lightly push it some more. And see, we even got a little bit of excess oil leaking out. And then you just tiny little push more, and it's on there good and tight. So now it is time to wipe down these pipes so we don't get a bunch of smoke whenever we start this up next. Pause it. Okay, so we're just going to take this a little bit. We're going to wipe this down just as much as you can get off, really. It's not going to hurt anything if it does. It's just good to do. Do the same thing to both sides. Make sure to get all the undersides too. It's just a good thing to do to make sure your bike doesn't get hurt on startups or while running. So I'm going to go do this to the other side, and then we will try doing filling. Okay, so now that we have cleaned these off and they're pretty dry, just good enough so that you think they won't burn or anything like that when you start up your bike. Now we're going to come from down there all the way up the side of the engine up to our fill hole for our oil right here. So it should just be a take it off, and then we can find a funnel and we can start pouring our oil in. I'm going to get this off and I'll get back to you. So now that we have our fill port right here, I loosened it beforehand because these can be quite a pain sometimes, as you probably saw in the video before this. So we're going to loosen it because sometimes it can take two hands, so had to get that going. So now we have our fill cap off. I'm going to put our funnel in there, and then I can go grab my oil and we can start filling. So while we fill, we're going to also watch right here on the side of the engine, and once we get to the line on here that says top of oil fill, then we will stop, shake the engine around, and look again. Okay, so the oil that this bike uses is 10W40. I got a 5-quart because the internet says these take a 4, but I'm not going to trust that entirely, so we are going to use probably most of this. So now we have our funnel in there. We're going to take the cap off of our oil, which can be a little difficult because we have a little ring we got to break. Then we have a open bottle. We're going to make sure we have this as vertical as possible to make it easier on us. And we fill, not too quickly, just make sure that the level in the engine does not go overboard. Well, we're going to check it, put the drain in, wait for it to move and settle. Still not even close. So I will get back to you guys once we have it up to the fill line. Okay. So we have our oil put in up to that fill line there, a little bit below it, but we're planning on cranking it over a couple times, getting that oil moving, and then going to put some more in up to that fill line to make sure that we're all the way topped up. Plus, probably a good idea just in case we have any excess oil leaks or anything like that. Just a good idea to make sure that we have a little bit extra in there. Okay, so now that we have it filled and I have the cap back on, only lightly though, because we want to be able to get back in there once we've done this. I'm going to slosh that oil around, try and get it onto all those little crevices, all those little areas where it might not fill just from that port. And then after we're done with that, we'll check our oil level again and see how much more we need to add. Then we will crank the engine over 3 or 4 times, and then do the same thing all over again. Alright, now we're going to check our level here. Let it settle for a second and create a bubble. Okay, so when I leaned it over this far this way, I believe that I covered this entire glass, so we're not going to really be able to see. So either way though, I do want to crank the engine over at least a couple times to make sure that we get that oil circulated. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so we're going to crank it a couple times to make sure that we get that oil circulated everywhere that it needs to be. Alright, here goes. There's once. And there's twice. So that was just to fill the oil filter and any of the upper piston area where you can't really reach from the fill port. So now, that should be the entirety of a oil change on this Ninja. Okay guys, the end of the video. Make sure to always dispose of your oil in a responsible manner so we don't hurt our environment any more than we already do.